All right, so get this. Spirit Airlines filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Spirit Airlines.
Yeah, the pay extra for everything airline.
Oh, right.
You think they'd be invincible after all the,
Yeah.
less than stellar customer reviews,
Yeah.
but November 18th, 2024, they hit that Chapter 11 button.
Planned bankruptcy.
Planned bankruptcy, yeah.
That's interesting. They didn't just run out of cash. They actually had a plan.
Yeah, it's more like a controlled crash landing, hoping to
Yeah.
walk away
Yeah.
from the wreckage and rebuild. But we're talking over $1 billion in payments.
Wow.
They can't make over $2.5 billion in losses since 2020.
Wow.
And those failed mergers with Frontier and JetBlue, it's a mess.
So the million-dollar question is, did they make the right call?
Right.
Is this planned bankruptcy their Phoenix moment, or are they headed for a financial graveyard? To answer that,
Yeah.
we need to go back in time and understand how this whole bankruptcy thing even came about. Buckle up. The history of bankruptcy law is a wild ride, full of drama, villains, and maybe a few heroes.
Ooh, I love a good story with a twist.
I bet you do.
So take us back to the beginning.
Okay.
What was it like for businesses in financial trouble in the early days of the U.S.?
Picture the Wild West, but with businesses and creditors.
Right.
Instead of cowboys and saloons, it was a chaotic mess of state laws, short-lived federal acts. Every financial failure was a free-for-all.
So survival of the fittest, financially speaking.
Yeah, pretty much. Creditors could seize any assets they could get their hands on,
Oh, wow.
leaving businesses with no chance for a comeback.
Someone must have stepped in to bring order to this chaos, right?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, eventually. Enter the Bankruptcy Act of 1898.
Okay.
Our first hero in this story. This act finally created a permanent federal framework for handling insolvency, bringing some consistency to the process.
So a glimmer of civilization in the financial Wild West.
Yeah, you could say that.
But I bet even that 1898 Act couldn't have anticipated the Great Depression.
You're right. The Great Depression exposed a flaw. The system wasn't ready for huge corporate collapses.
Oh, so it's like a financial Titanic with not enough lifeboats.
Yeah, exactly. Entire industries were on the brink.
Yikes, that's terrifying.
It was. But they came up with a life raft, Chapter X.
Chapter X.
It was a new addition to the bankruptcy code, specifically for handling massive corporate reorganizations.
Okay, a legal defibrillator, shocking companies back to life.
That's a great way to put it.
So we've gone from a financial free-for-all to a system that can handle even the biggest meltdowns.
Exactly.
I'm guessing this is where our friend Chapter 11 enters the scene.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Chapter 11 was introduced with the 1978 Bankruptcy Code. It went from being a mark of shame to a strategic tool for restructuring and coming back even stronger.
It's not always a sad ending then. Sometimes it's the beginning of a comeback story.
That's right.
And I bet there are some pretty traumatic examples of companies that use Chapter 11 to make incredible turnarounds.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about Continental Airlines back in 1983.
Okay.
They were struggling. Outdated labor contracts were dragging them down.
Oh, I see.
They had a CEO, Frank Lorenzo.
Yeah.
He was ready to shake things up.
Sounds a little villainous.
Well, he realized those contracts were anchors, so he used Chapter 11 to break free from them. Hit the reset button on deals stifling their growth.
Wow, a risky gamble.
It was, but it paid off big time.
So Chapter 11 can be a sword as much as a shield, letting companies cut away the dead weight.
Exactly. And it's not just about surviving, it's also about addressing those underlying issues.
Okay.
With Johns Manville in 1982.
Johns Manville.
They were facing tons of asbestos liabilities, a legacy that threatened to bury the entire company.
Asbestos, that's definitely a villain in this story.
Sure.
So how do they use Chapter 11 to deal with that?
They did something groundbreaking. They used Chapter 11 to shield themselves from those liabilities, but also to keep operating. They set up a trust to handle the asbestos claims.
So they were addressing their past mistakes while still providing jobs, contributing to the economy.
Exactly.
It's not just about escaping debt, it's about moving forward responsibly,
You got it.
even when faced with huge challenges.
And sometimes companies use Chapter 11 even when they aren't technically bankrupt.
Wait, what?
Take Texaco in 1987.
Okay.
They were solvent, meaning they had the money,
Right.
but they were in this massive legal battle that threatened their future.
So they used Chapter 11 as a legal strategy.
Pretty clever, right?
Very clever.
They leveraged it to gain an advantage in that legal battle. It worked.
Wow.
Sent shockwaves through the business world, showing just how powerful Chapter 11 could be.
We've seen Chapter 11 as a shield, a sword, even a chess piece in a high-stakes legal game.
Yeah.
Now I'm even more curious how Spirit Airlines plans to use it to their advantage.
Right.
But we've covered a lot already.
Yeah, we have.
Let's
Take a breath.
take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into Spirit's situation and see if their planned bankruptcy is truly a phoenix moment or a final descent.
Stay tuned. Things are about to get really interesting. Welcome back. We've traveled through this wild history of bankruptcy law.
From the Wild West to a strategic chessboard, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
But let's get back to Spirit Airlines.
right.
Did they make the right call with this planned bankruptcy?
To answer that, we got to examine those clues, starting with the good news.
Oh, right, the stable load factor and decent on-time performance.
Yeah.
If their planes were flying half empty and always delayed,
Right.
this would look more like waving the white flag.
It would, but a stable load factor.
People are still choosing Spirit.
Yeah.
Decent operations, they're not a total mess.
Exactly. It suggests they might be using this bankruptcy as a calculated pause.
Okay, I like that, a calculated pause. To fix the engine while the plane's taxiing.
I like that too.
But what are they hoping to fix during this pit stop?
Their financials tell a story of mounting debt, persistent losses.
Okay.
Chapter 11 gives them the power to renegotiate those debts.
So they can go to their creditors and say, hey, we need to adjust these payments, or we might not be flying at all.
Exactly.
And the creditors would have an incentive to work with them, because getting something is better than nothing.
Right. It's a high-stakes negotiation.
It is.
But Chapter 11 provides that structured environment.
But those creditors aren't just going to roll over. What leverage does Spirit actually have?
Well, one of their biggest expenses is likely their aircraft leases.
Okay.
Remember how Continental used Chapter 11 to break free from those bad contracts?
Oh, right.
Spirit could maybe renegotiate those leases, maybe even get rid of some planes.
If they can lower their lease costs, it frees up a lot of cash.
Right.
But wouldn't that upset the leasing companies? They're not in the business of giving handouts.
Oh, it's definitely going to be a tough fight. Those companies want their money.
Right.
But Chapter 11 allows Spirit to argue those leases are unsustainable. They might have to reject them completely if they can't compromise.
So a risky move, but maybe their best chance.
Could.
Okay, so we've got debt restructuring, lease renegotiations.
Mm-hmm.
What about those failed mergers with Frontier and JetBlue?
Right.
Were those attempts to avoid this, or were they signs that they were already in trouble?
Probably a bit of both. Those mergers could have helped their finances,
Yeah.
but they also suggest that Spirit's leadership knew they needed a change.
So this planned bankruptcy, maybe it's not a failure,
Yeah.
but a recognition that they needed a more drastic course correction.
Exactly, like hitting the reset button.
Right.
A chance to restructure and reinvent.
But what about the human cost? What does this mean for Spirit's employees?
That's a big question.
It is.
And it's often a source of anxiety.
Yeah, job security's got to be top of mind right now for a lot of people.
Absolutely, but it's important to remember Spirit says they plan to continue operations
Okay.
during this process.
So business as usual for passengers.
Right.
But for employees, a cloud of uncertainty.
There's always uncertainty in these situations, but Chapter 11 doesn't automatically mean layoffs or pay cuts.
Okay, so there's hope they can navigate this without hurting their workforce.
Exactly. They might renegotiate contracts, but that doesn't always mean bad things.
Right.
It all depends on the specific situation.
So it's a waiting game for employees.
Yeah.
Hoping for the best, but maybe preparing for some tough choices.
It's the reality of any big restructuring, tough decisions.
We've talked debt, leases, the impact on employees, but we also got to consider the competition, right? The airline industry is tough.
It is.
And Spirit has some serious rivals.
Yeah, you're right. Those failed mergers highlight that they're facing pressure from those legacy airlines with all their resources and from newer, even cheaper airlines.
So they're getting squeezed from both ends.
They are.
How can Chapter 11 help them with this?
Think of it as a chance to streamline, become more efficient, maybe even rebrand.
Okay.
It's not just survival. It's about coming out stronger and ready to compete.
So not just staying afloat, but aiming to soar even higher.
That's the idea. But whether they can pull it off, we'll have to see.
Right.
How those negotiations go, how they handle the employee situation.
Yeah.
And ultimately, can they convince passengers that Spirit 2.0 is worth flying?
Okay, no definitive answers yet, but it sounds like this could be a brilliant move or the beginning of the end.
We've given you the pieces of the puzzle.
We have?
You decide, Phoenix rising from the ashes, or a plane heading for a crash landing.
I'm on the edge of my seat. We've looked at how bankruptcy law evolved from its Wild West days to the strategic tool it is now. And we've dug into Spirit Airlines financials, their
Yeah.
failed mergers.
Right, those bare bones amenities.
Do they charge for oxygen masks now?
Not yet, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, but really, will Spirit Airlines make a comeback? Or is this the beginning of the end?
We've seen how companies like Continental used Chapter 11 to break free from bad contracts. Johns Manville tackled those asbestos liabilities.
Right, even Texaco, with money in the bank, used Chapter 11 strategically. It shows it's possible to come out stronger?
It does.
But it's not a magic solution, is it?
No, not at all. Every case is different, and success depends on so many things. Management, the industry, those creditors.
The whole economy has to cooperate.
Yeah, it's like a souffle. You need the right ingredients, A&D, perfect execution.
How's Spirit's baking going? Masterpiece or flop?
They're bold, that's for sure. Choosing planned bankruptcy means they're thinking strategically.
Right.
And remember that steady load factor, people are still flying Spirit.
Okay, but steady isn't growing.
True.
Is their ultra-low-cost model hitting a wall?
Maybe passengers are getting smarter, maybe rock bottom prices aren't enough.
Right.
It's a balancing act. Cut costs too much, you risk losing customers,
Yeah,
don't control expenses, back to trouble.
it's like a game of Jenga, pulling out costs and hoping it doesn't all collapse.
Exactly.
And we can't forget those lease negotiations, labor talks.
Huge factors.
Those leasing companies will fight to get their money,
Oh, yeah.
and Spirit's employees are worried about their jobs.
Of course.
Those negotiations are crucial.
They are.
So Spirit's future is up in the air, lots of things outside their control.
It's definitely a high-pressure situation.
It is.
But here's where it gets interesting. Let's say Spirit gets through these negotiations.
Okay.
They restructure their debt, streamline, come out of Chapter 11 leaner.
Okay, I'm imagining slightly more comfortable seats, maybe a free pretzel.
Maybe.
Then what? Back to business as usual.
That's the big question. What if this becomes the blueprint for other struggling airlines? Imagine planned bankruptcy as a routine tool, a reset button.
A pit stop to tune up and re-enter the race.
Exactly, but think about what that means. Would it make the industry more efficient, innovative,
Right.
or would it just create constant instability for everyone?
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
We've gone from Spirit's balance sheet to the future of the whole industry.
That's what a deep dive is all about. You never know where it'll go.
We've given you the background, the financial picture, a bit
Yeah.
of skepticism.
It's up to you to decide. Triumphant comeback or turbulent crash landing.
Keep your eyes on the skies, seatbelts fastened.
The ride's not over yet.
The deep dive. Signing off. Thanks for joining us.